Great, thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Norway. It's a pleasure to see you all here. And like many of you, I'm a huge fan of anything on wheels, 4 wheels or 2 wheels. So it's a great pleasure to be here to usher in this new era of electric mobility at Mercedes. Now, any of you some of you might be skeptical about this new electric wave that we're going towards, or already passionate about it, but I think we can all agree that electric is the future, and we're even seeing that at the racetrack. And Mercedes-Benz will be joining Formula E at the end of this year for the new season with their EQ Silver Arrow 01, and we've also got the Moto E coming to the MotoGP. And when you think about it, it was Mercedes that started it all 130 years ago, inventing the car and the motorbike. So this EQC is really the car's reinvention, and who better to talk us through a little bit more about this than Director of Development, Chief Engineer, Michael Kelz.
Hello. Hello, and good evening from my side.
All right, so we're all here in Norway, Michael, and it's a gorgeous country, but why did you choose Norway of all the places in the world to do the test drive of the EQC?
Yeah, beautiful. Norway is a very beautiful country, and so this beauty fits nicely really to our car. And so the only thing is, I think today in the rain, you could not see so much of this. And but on the other hand, maybe you were more impressed about the garage where we have started with the cars, because you could see already that times are changing and that the whole garage is really completely equipped with the equipment for electric cars, so that you can move your car there while you are on the flight. And from the equipment, from the sustainability and so on, Norway is really ahead, and no doubt. I think a garage like this you might not have seen before. So that's the one thing. The other thing is the car feels pretty familiar here, because in the end we have done all the winter testing in the north, so in Scandinavia, have been in all the countries, mainly in Sweden, okay. But just from all the approaches at low temperatures, finally we have a good contact here. And so also this was one of the things we said, okay, that fits in nicely.
Yeah, I know you did have quite dramatic weather today, but it's true, Norway is one of the most ecologically developed countries on the planet, and by 2025 they will be stopping all sales of diesel or gasoline-powered vehicles. And already today they are 15% with the vehicles on the road are electric or they're plug-in hybrids. So we're doing pretty well on that front.
Absolutely, and on the other hand, the good thing is that all the power for these are coming out of water power, so finally it's also very sustainable. So for us, also a good way finally to get a sustainable charge of our car. Yes, and that's true. So not even only this 15% that may be on the road, but if you look at the sales, it's even going much faster up. So yes, in the end, I think we have to get used to electric driving overall.
Well, that's a very optimistic and positive thing for us to be doing as a planet. But given that Mercedes-Benz core business is those combustion engine cars, how are policies like this and a future like this, how is that going to hurt the business, if at all?
No doubt. So in the end, we are coming from the combustion engine. And now we do a lot of electrification to the combustion engines, and it's still a core business. Not every country is looking like Norway. So if you look all over the world, it's also not the same infrastructure. So we have a lot of countries where if I plug in the car, maybe the lights won't go off. So in the end, we have to really find a solution for all the countries. Yeah? And so in the end, it's really the case that we have to even get more efficiency still to our combustion engines, and with electrifying the engines, this is one of the opportunities we have there.
Okay, so looking at it, what does EQ stand for?
In general, EQ stands for electric intelligence, no doubt, but it has 3 driving lanes, like you see here behind us. So the one is EQ Boost, so that's our boost system with the 48 volts. Then we have the plugins, so the EQ Power system, and AMG has Power Plus, so finally with plug-in hybrids. Yeah, and then we have the EQ, the bare electric cars. But this 3 lanes we really will feed in the next years, and all these are also important. So it's not the one or the other, it's really doing all these, because as I said, we have different customers, different needs, and that's why we have to really deal on all these sides.
This looks exciting. How many models have you got planned?
On the electric side, on the all-electric side, about 10 in the next years, and the others is mainly electrifying also these, because we nearly now have all the cars also as a plug-in hybrid, and on plug-in hybrids we will have more range and more range, so finally all this will develop. But on the bare electric side it's about 10.
All right, so can we start looking at some of the technology behind the EQC? I think we can all tell that it drives really well, but what are the numbers behind this?
Yeah, EQ is really optimized in all details. This was for us really the major goal. And just from the technical facts, we look at 408 horsepower. We are at 5.1 seconds to 100, so for acceleration, and this is possible because we have 760 Newton meters of torque. So finally, just from the technical side, I think very good numbers, but for us mainly also it has to be driving fun, it has to be on the other hand very economically, so finally it's not the numbers at all.
What can you talk to us about Dynamic Select?
Dynamic Select you find also in the EQ, but now not anymore under this Sports and Sports Plus aspect where we were coming from with Dynamic Select, because in the past most people had said, okay, Eco, that's not my topic, so we go to Sports and Sports Plus. Now we have still Sports, no doubt, on a car like that, but in the end we have enlarged the program a little bit on the other side, so we have Eco. And we have also max range. So max range we did not have before. Why max range? It's an EV, so we had to offer also a program. This really helps you to get the maximum in range. And you can all try it. It's a little bit guides you, and some of you might not so really love this if you can only drive 50 in a 50 zone. But in the end it's a help to enlarge range. The basic regular program in default is still comfort, which is core of Mercedes. So finally, if you just start in, first of all, Neo and Comfort, and you just go, and then it feels like every Mercedes, anyhow, whether you have combustion engine or not. But the other programs finally have now a large program.
Okay, well, it does sound ideal. What are some of the solutions you have around efficiency and recuperation?
Recuperation has in the end 5 different modes. So if you start, as I said before, your car, you're in a standard mode and it says D. Like on every car we have, so finally as soon as you go, it says just drive. And you can use the pedals that we had for shifting before. Now we cannot shift anymore because we have no gears, okay? So we use this now for the recuperation. You can go with your right pedal to the D plus mode. That means you are in the saving mode, so this car is just running without any power. On the other hand, we have the recuperation modes D minus and D minus minus. Minus minus is the strongest one, and that's the one pedal feeling. And if you pull for a longer time, then you get into D auto. And D auto is the really intelligent recuperation program that you can run. So finally, this takes everything in account, like the signs on the road, the car that's going in front of you, if there's coming a roundabout or if there's a coming a city. And so finally, that's the intelligent type for the recuperation.
And I really liked that one pedal driving. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah. So the one pedal driving, that is really the maximum of recuperation, and it depends on what you want to use it for. Some people say, okay, that's super, because I can drive more sporty, because in the end it's pretty clear, and then if I lift the pedal in front of the curve, then finally you only have to use the one. I think it's to everyone just to try out which program you really like. So just depending on that. Yeah.
Well, there's still time to try that all out tomorrow as well. But I think you also realised and tried out today the acoustics. It's a very quiet machine. How did you figure that out?
Yeah. So one of the really major goals for the whole car was to make it as quiet as possible and to get rid of the noises that could come from the engines, so from the motors. In the end, you know it from train driving or tram driving or whatever. You have these electric noises, and we wanted to avoid those, and that's the reason why we have kind of isolated the front engine, so with two different bearings from the chassis. And on the other hand, we have encapsulated the complete rear motor, really the rear electric motor, so that no noises can come from the motor. So that the one thing finally that's left is the wheel noise. And to avoid this, then finally we have put a lot of material in also for insulating the whole cabin. And to get really rid of this as much as possible, up to that we have acoustic windows as a standard on the driver and passenger windows. So finally, and the windshield also. So our acoustic package really that comes standard with the car is already very high. So because in the end, if you do not have engine noises, finally, then you also try to reduce the other noises. And as comfort is really core for Mercedes, finally, noise was really one of our major focus.
Okay.
Besides the fun of sport.
Yeah, but another focus was safety. So how did you get around any problems with safety? Because you've got this enormous battery right here in the car.
So in total, the car fulfills all safety standards which we have as a very high standard on all our cars. So finally, safety is really the most important and always first. Then comes the comfort and the noise. So in the end, we have done all the extensive crash testing that we regularly anyway have, and we added a lot of additional tests, especially also for the battery protection. So it's not only that we fulfill the standard tests, but fulfill a lot of additional tests which are looking at the battery.
Okay, and speaking of the battery, because this is really the heart of the vehicle, what makes the battery in the EQC so special?
The crash protection of the battery is very rigid and very solid. So in the end, as you can also see here, we have a box that does not only carry the cells in this case, but the surrounding of this box consists also of additional crash elements, and we have energy absorbers there, especially to protect the battery in case of a side impact. And maybe you have seen it already, or those that will go tomorrow to the airport where we have our exhibition. You can see a car that has been in a crash test, in a pole test, and you can see that we are still a lot away from the cells. So finally, yes, the safety of the battery was for us very important. What you can also see on one of the models is that we have kind of shield protection if there are obstacles on the road, so that they are kicked out before they hit the battery. So all this, not only the crash situations, but also those situations, we have taken care that we have a very good solution. And maybe the last thing is finally that we have tested it also from temperatures from minus 35 degrees to plus 50 degrees, so that all the cooling and so on of the battery also works, if you see that also as a safety topic. But the main issue is really also to care for the passive safety and for incidents.
Well, before we get on to your time testing, can we talk a bit about how to charge this car? What are the options for the customer?
Yeah, you can charge your car as a household socket, but I think you would not like to do this, because finally that takes 24 hours and more. So this is not the idea behind a fully electric vehicle, no doubt. So finally we have a 7.4 kilowatt charger on the AC side, which is sufficient to charge from 0 to full the battery in 11 hours. In general, we think that's really sufficient for overnight, because finally it's not always completely empty. So that's the one option. The other thing is DC charging. DC charging is possible up to 110 kilowatts, depending on the conditions of the battery. So very important, a cold battery you cannot charge. So to get really the 110 kilowatts, the battery has to be conditioned. And the battery conditioning, this is run by our head unit. So in the end, if you use the navigation system to go to a charging point, then the battery will be conditioned for you. So in the end, if you wouldn't do this, the car cannot know that you want to charge it now. So if it would be in winter and it would be maybe minus 20 or minus 10 degrees, you would have a cold battery. You would go to a charging station, come there, and you would maybe see only 30 or 40 kilowatts. So, and then you have a much longer charging time. So we implemented this charging option into the navigation system. And then finally, if you come there, it's already heated. It just calculates how much you can put in there as heat, because it takes you away a little bit driving distance. But finally, it's an intelligence behind, so that you can get the maximum charging power that fits to that situation. And what you see already in this case, finally, yes, you have to get used to this. In the end, a little bit of the stuff, I think you have to get a little bit involved in it. That you think about winter times. In summer it's easy. Nothing happens. 25 degrees, everything is ideal. You do not have to think about anything. But a certain challenge is winter times, and that was also one of the reasons why we have taken it here, because we say, okay, we do not want to have dissatisfied customers later on, so it must be clear also to talk about what happens in winter, because winter is really a challenge for EV.
Okay, but you have been very smart also about the convenience of charging and installing all over Europe the Ionity rapid chargers.
Yeah.
How's that network looking?
Ionity will have about 400 stations all over Europe in 2020. Actually, when you drive around here, you can find 2 stations where you, maybe those that have been here already, that have been at the charging stations. So we have also installed it here. Those that have not been here because of the flight stuff can see that tomorrow.
Okay, what about the range then? How far can you get?
The official range in the end is over 400 kilometers, so we are talking at the NEDC of about 471 kilometers. This sounds a lot. The reality is less, no doubt, because everybody knows that this is a cycle that you can drive, okay, maybe here outside if you go going 80, but then constantly or even less. Realistic, really what I drive the car in the summertime, if you have parts on the Autobahn and you drive 120 kilometers and then you have a highway in between, or you go in city driving. So in our summer times we reach about 360 kilometers, which is really realistic, 370 somewhat about. So if you go slow, then finally you can also reach about 400 kilometers.
Yeah.
But in winter, pretty clear. So finally, if weather is cold, you have minus 10 degrees, so which can happen all over Europe. You can go back to ranges of about 260 or 270 kilometers, because in the end you put the energy from the battery into your heating, and finally that is a loss for what you can do as a range. So everybody must be clear about this, that in winter times ranges are smaller, and this cannot be avoided. That's physics, and that's why we also talk about this and say, okay, winter times, this is so what you can reach. If it's getting extremely cold, it can be also less. And if you are going very slow, so if you're only in city driving and you heat all the time, but you have a mean velocity of maybe only 20 or 30 kilometers an hour, no doubt, then the heating is consuming nearly more than you're driving. So, because okay, if the car is standing, it doesn't consume anything but heat. So it's always hard to discuss what is really the range you can go. Yeah. But so as a general idea, so about 360 to 400 in summer if you go slow, and in the winter times in regular driving about 260.
But given it can vary so much according to how everyone drives or what routes they're doing, it's great with the multimedia display and how well informed the driver can be about where their battery's at. How did that get developed?
This is for us very important, because finally we integrated everything in the MBUX, so that you can also use speech. So you can advise the car, you can say, okay, charge it only to 85% or you can use the system just for preconditioning. So if you say, okay, I want to leave tomorrow at 7, or please precondition for 7 o'clock, then in the end all these functions can be driven on this head unit. And also the navigation and everything I explained before related to charging is running there, up to the nice situation that you do not have to have any cards or any tokens or whatever. You just go to the charging station, look on your head unit, and then finally tip on this on the display. You see the charging station and can pay with this. So you do not need any cards or whatever for the payments. As soon as you have a contract, then finally you can just run it with a car. So there are much more functions, but I think about MBUX that would go a little bit too far.
I know, it's all really good, but given you are the chief engineer and you were out there doing the development, doing the testing, you're in the cold in Sweden, you're in the heat in Spain, what are some of your great memories during that whole process as you were developing this car, ready to get it ready?
I think so. From the beginnings, when we first had the drivetrain in our prototypes, which we took GLC Coupe, and we were first time in Sweden and going on ice. It was really impressive, and we saw that you have a lot more opportunities in an electric car, because finally you can do what we call micro torque management. Your management is much faster than with brakes or with I talk about that also in a minute.
Just checking it out.
But as said, so finally your management of torque is much faster than if you have a hydraulic brake or if you have a combustion engine that has to start and you have to shift and all this. Yeah, all this is now gone, so it's just by pushing the pedal immediately you have the high torque. So finally we invested a lot of time during the process to optimize this. So in the end that makes a lot of driving fun, like we see behind us. It's not only hard work, sometimes it's also fun. Okay. And so in the last, you can say, development time 4 years, but 3 years we had this intense testing in winter, and in summer we have run about 200 prototypes during that time. And yes, we have also been on gravel roads, what you have seen before on that other picture, but just also to make it clear, we are not talking about off-road driving, okay? So finally the car is not an SUV for off-road driving, it's a car with clearly an SUV style, but in the end it's not for off-road. You can go nicely gravels, no problem, as said. And also from the traction, it's genius, no doubt, because you have two axles completely independent. So going uphill, very steep, works wonderful. But from the ground clearance, the motors are sitting in the axles. So finally, it's not as much ground clearance as you have on an SUV. Yeah. So as said, no off-road driving, and but gravel is fine.
That's a fair warning for any reckless drivers tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah, we had already one that tried it really on the hardcore side. That should not happen. No, but it's also a clear comment from us. So it was not developed for off-road driving. Okay, then you need something else. Maybe last thing, when we did all the stuff with climatization and heating, and so we saw that finally the energy consumption of the heating, no doubt physics is clear, is a big topic, and that's why we have implemented a heat pump system as a standard also to the car. So finally we have no regular cooling and air conditioning. It's working a different way. So in the front is no refrigerant cooler, that is only water cooler there. Then you can see this also if you go to the exhibition, or you might have seen it today. But we have implemented this also because in the vehicle where you have to cool also the battery when it's very hot. So and then you charge, you need another system, and we use this to integrate a heat pump, which is standard on the car.
Great. Well, Michael, thank you so much for your insights and taking us through the development there. And everybody, thank you for your attention. I'm going to now pass on to Wolfgang, who will wrap up this evening and let you know your itinerary tomorrow.
For those that came late, I was at the exhibition, but for those that came late, so finally you can ask me also after this thing. Okay.
That's perfect.